Okay, a heavy one today. I hope you're all sitting comfortably. Then we will begin. Brothers, sisters, comrades, and friends. This video is addressed to the families and the loved ones of alcoholics. So if you are currently an alcoholic in active alcoholism, I suggest you go and do something else for the next half an hour. Go and be constructive in some way, because we're talking about you and not to you. To those of you remaining, to the families and loved ones of alcoholics, I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is that hundreds of thousands of people before you have navigated this identical problem to you. And you can trust their experience to build a roadmap for you. And I hope it's some consolation that there are exits on this roadmap. The path has been plotted for you by those who have gone before you, and there is a way out. The bad news is that on the way, you can expect to face some of life's hardest questions, and you can expect to be lied to and insulted and manipulated and gaslit and blame shifted, all in the process of trying to help. Now, this is easier said than done, but try not to take all of that stuff personally. Alcohol is a drug that hijacks alcoholics' brains and makes them say and do mean things to get what they want, to protect their access to alcohol. How do I know that? Because I did it. I am one of the group that I am talking about, and I'm using a lot from my own personal experience here to inform what I want to say to you. Now, all of those lies and hurtful things that this person is saying and doing, they say there is truth in alcohol, but there isn't. Well, there is a bit, but alcohol is very literally a mind-altering drug. It changes people's brains very literally, so it's unreasonable to expect everything an alcoholic says to be the truth. Try not to let it hurt you. Like I said, that's easier said than done. But they're not necessarily being malicious. It's not, the things that an alcoholic says are not automatically malice. It is alcoholism itself talking. It is the addiction trying to protect access. And I know how shitty an alcoholic's behavior can be in a relationship, surrounded by loved ones and family members who only want to help, who only want to see them get better. And I know that firsthand because, like I said, I was one of them. And I carry a huge amount of guilt and shame over some of the things that I said and did while I was actively drinking. So for me personally, I am deeply sorry to my family, to my friends, to my loved ones for what I put them through. And on behalf of alcoholics everywhere, I'm sorry that you have to go through this too. There's a lot of collateral damage in alcoholism, and the alcoholic themselves are very rarely aware of the impact that they're having on the people around them. Alcoholism is a selfish condition, and it can make us, when we're experiencing it, absolutely blind to the consequences to the toll it's taking on the people around us. In fact, we tend to think that alcoholism is our problem. It's mine. I can do it if I want to. You should leave me alone. I'm not hurting anyone but me. That phrase comes up quite a lot. I'm not hurting anyone but me. That's how an alcoholic thinks. But that is patently untrue. People are getting hurt every day around an alcoholic. They just refuse to acknowledge it. And to that end, alcoholism is generally harder on the people around the alcoholic than it is on the alcoholic themselves. Because at least an alcoholic can retreat back into alcohol, whereas the people around have to deal with this mess, with this emotional and moral complexity. They have to do it sober. The alcoholic is just content to recede into oblivion when things get difficult. So allow me to try to offer some insight into why alcoholics are the way they are, and also perhaps offer some guidance on how you can navigate these difficult waters and come through okay. Let's go. And incidentally, before we continue, if any of this or anything that I'm about to say connects with you and you find it valuable, then do like and subscribe. If you would like to be slightly more involved and get access to the exclusive behind the scenes content, some more personal stuff, then go over to the Patreon. And there's a community ready and waiting to greet you over there of sober and nearly sober people. A lot of experiences being shared. Anyway, we now return you to Funhouse with Neil Buchanan. If I can make you understand one confusing piece of complexity in all this, it's this. If you get anything out of this video, let it be the following. Alcoholics don't like being alcoholics. We're not alcoholics because we love drinking. No, most of us hate it. And that's difficult to understand because from the outside, we hate it, but we do it anyway. We hate drinking and we do it anyway. We don't even want to do it, and yet we still do it. We drink even when we don't want to. We don't want to do it, and we will do anything at all not to do it. We would just much rather not be doing it, and then we just do it anyway. Usually, it's because there's something within us that makes us hate ourselves. Okay, so the reason why we're drinking is to hurt ourselves. It's not pleasurable. It's not a fun experience for an alcoholic. Being an alcoholic is not a great time. We're not out on the town. Generally speaking, we're not out on the town, succeeding and being charming, and we're generally full of resentment. We're full of anger and full of self-recrimination and self-hatred. That's what's driving the drinking. Alcoholism is an illness in every important sense of the word. What we need is not necessarily your anger as truly justified as your anger is. What we need is help, guidance. We're lost, and we're trying to find our way back. We're damaged. Something has damaged us, and we've never had the tools to be able to deal with that. And we can't help ourselves because it is impossible to make rational decisions when you are drunk. And once you understand that contradiction, that we don't even want to drink and we do it anyway, that should give you all the insight you need into the mind of an alcoholic. That simple paradox that we cannot avoid doing the thing that we know is bad for us, that understanding should unlock everything you need to know about the alcoholic in your life. It's all summarized there. Now, with all that said, it shouldn't be your responsibility to help. That's your choice. If you choose to help or if you choose not to, that is entirely up to you. And I would add that whichever you choose will be the correct choice, and either one of those choices comes with equally unpleasant and emotional, moral consequences. There's no good ways out here. Everything is we're dealing with the lessers of evils. For context, and for me personally, my girlfriend did choose to stay throughout the end of my alcoholism. And I walked right up to the edge of being cut out of my family's lives, right up to the edge of it. But they stuck with me too. Now, that's not to say that you should do that just because my outcome was a positive one. What I'm saying is kind of the opposite. In fact, having been a terrible piece of shit for several years myself, I have become very quick to tell partners of loved ones, or loved ones of alcoholics, that they should leave. I am of the opinion that it's better to leave early than late. And there should be no pressure on you, no obligation to try to fix things. Staying is not in any way morally superior than leaving. And everybody will respect whether you choose to stay, and everybody will understand if you choose to leave. They're equal choices, equally bad options. And just because I encourage people to leave early rather than late, even though my experience was different in the end, that's not hypocrisy. It's the hard knowledge that even in sobriety, I still, to this day, have to look into the eyes of my loved ones and see the hurt and the fear that I caused. And that's not easy to live with. I'm not looking for sympathy, obviously. It was me inflicting those conditions on other people. I'm not looking for sympathy. What I'm saying is that in a situation like this, there is damage all around and there are no good options. And it's important to recognize up front that things often get hard. Things are often still hard, even after they're better. That's what I see when I look in the faces of my loved ones. That is hard. And even if you decide to stay and to kind of try to stay the course, that decision doesn't have to be final. You don't have to stick to that decision forever. You have the right to withdraw that decision as soon as you feel like the risk outweighs the potential reward. As soon as you're in danger, or as soon as the threat level begins to increase, or as soon as you think the toll it's taking on your own mental health is beyond the value of trying to salvage the relationship, then you can rescind that decision to stay, and then you can go. It doesn't matter when, but in my opinion, earlier is better than later. Now, regarding what I just said about risk-reward, like when is the risk? When does the consequences for you outweigh the value of trying to salvage the relationship? I don't know where that threshold is. I'm not sure. Everybody is different. Alcoholics are all different, are all identical but with variations, right? And your journey through this and their journey into recovery is going to look different for everybody. But at some point, you'll know it. You'll know where the threshold is when you get to it. And perhaps you've already crossed it and you've already recognized it. If that's the case, you certainly need to think about protecting yourself. If you stumble across that threshold, or if you've already passed it, then in order to prevent yourself from any further harm, it is time to cut ties. And besides, an alcoholic needs professional help. They need specialists in order to help them get better. They don't need a bed nurse mopping their brow when they go through withdrawal. They need professional assistance. They need real support, not to just be told that everything's going to be okay tomorrow. Withdrawing from alcohol is tough. It's hard. I had it as hard as it gets. I had delirium tremens 4 times. And that is not a thing that you want to put a loved one through. That is a medical emergency. I consider most of alcoholism, especially late-stage chronic alcoholism, to be an urgent medical emergency. It's not going to be solved by you hiding alcohol from them, or monitoring their intake, or trying to taper down, or calling in sick on their behalf, that kind of thing. That's not what's going to solve this. And it's okay to cut ties completely, in the knowledge that if they are ever serious about seeking help, then you will return. You will be part of that. That is the bit that you want to be a part of. But until then, you have to disappear from their lives in order to protect yourself. Don't be afraid of that thought, and don't feel guilty for having it. After all, it might be the wake-up call that they need in order to begin getting better. And if they don't make a commitment to getting better after you've left, you'll know that they never were going to get better. And unfortunately, you made the right choice. You did the right thing, as hard as it was. Now, I'm going to give you a slightly controversial opinion, and that's this. As much as alcoholism is out of the control of an alcoholic, the condition itself is beyond their control. Every time we put a drink in our bodies, that first drink is always a choice. That's a hard fact and a difficult opinion. We don't choose to be alcoholics, but everyone chooses whether or not they drink. That is a choice. And that's why it is okay to be angry at them. It is okay. In fact, it would be healthy. Anger would be a proper response for somebody who is behaving like this. Don't be ashamed of your anger. That is an appropriate emotional response to the situation. Sure, alcoholism is an illness that is chronic, and relapses are normal as part of that process. However, once the person becomes aware of those consequences, once an alcoholic is aware of that information, anytime they take a drink, especially a first drink, that is a decision. It might not even feel like it to the alcoholic, but it is. And therefore, you're right to be angry. And you should resist the urge to hand wave their behavior away and say things like, well, alcoholism is a disease. As if that's like a carte blanche to behave as terribly as you want. Even if it is a disease, which I'm skeptical about, we as disease sufferers have an obligation to reduce the impact and the consequences of our disease on other people. People with epilepsy, for example, often don't drive. Diabetic people change their diets. Alcoholism, if you want to consider it a disease, fine. But if you do, then you also have to understand that that person has an obligation to mitigate the consequences of their disease. This is part of a social contract we all make with each other. It's why we all stayed home, or most of us stayed home during the coronavirus. It's because of a social contract that we don't want to make other people suffer because we are suffering. Why should alcohol be an exception to that? In fact, suppressing that anger is more likely to do long-lasting harm, both to you and to your alcoholic. Suppressing it is the least healthy way. What you need is a healthy way to vent that build-up of anger. And I would politely suggest that Al-Anon, this community of partners and loved ones of alcoholics, is where you can go to safely vent that anger. You'll find there a community of people experiencing exactly the same thing as you. And it's just healthy to talk it out with people who truly understand what you're going through. There's some solidarity in that. Now, if you're caring for an alcoholic, if you're living with an alcoholic, then there's a chance by now you've wondered if you're enabling them, right? Put that thought out of your head. Alcoholism is a chronic, relapsing condition. You didn't cause it. You can't control it. And in my opinion, accusations of enabling or self-recrimination about whether or not you're enabling an alcoholic do no one any good. And again, the conversation about enabling is a relatively heated one in recovery circles. And that's why I would encourage you, if you have an alternative opinion to mine, to share it in the comments, because I am by no means correct. Just because I have a posh accent, it doesn't automatically make me right about this stuff. But my opinion is this, having been an alcoholic, whether or not you're enabling them or not, the truth is this: if it's not you, an alcoholic will find a way to access alcohol through any devious, manipulative means they can. There will always be a way. Whether you're participating or not, if it's not you, it'll be someone else, or they will find a way to drag themselves to the local off-license or liquor store, whatever. Believe me when I say from first-hand experience that alcoholics will lie and manipulate and exaggerate to protect their access to alcohol. They will find a way, and if it's not you, it will be something else. So go easy on yourself with wondering whether you're enabling their behavior. Just don't beat yourself up about it. This is not your problem. It's not your obligation to deal with it. You don't have to be picking up the pieces all the time and then beating yourself up about whether or not you're responsible for it. You're not. The only thing you can do in that regard is to choose not to participate. This is a question not about enabling, it's about participation. This is their condition. It will only be treated, it will only get better when they sincerely want it to get better. Beyond that, it's up to them. They have to want it, or it just won't stick. So maybe you need to consider not how to get them sober, but how to stop participating in their illness. This will help both of you, and this is the way that you should frame it. It's not about enabling, it's about not participating. The most common tool that you have in your arsenal is boundaries, setting boundaries for yourself. But do it with some understanding, right? And let the alcoholic know that there are consequences and you will stick to them. Here are 3 useful boundaries that are going to communicate your position, and then I'll briefly explain why they're good afterwards. The first one is saying this to your alcoholic: I won't be around when you're drinking, and anytime they are drinking, leave. Perhaps another boundary to set is that you won't give them money for alcohol and you won't buy it for them anymore. This one should be self-explanatory. But the final one is a big one. I will not lie on your behalf. So a lot of the loved ones of alcoholics find themselves in the difficult position of being manipulated into lying for the alcoholic, whether it's to friends or more commonly it's calling in sick on behalf of the alcoholic. By removing that kind of safety net, by removing that support and removing it from yourself too, you stand a good chance of showing the alcoholic that there are real consequences to their drinking, that they will have to deal with the mess that they're making themselves. Now, notice what is valuable about these particular 3 boundaries, phrased in roughly the way that I phrased them there, is that they don't try to govern the alcoholic's behavior. They are about your own behavior. What you're talking about with these boundaries of not lying, not buying, and not being around them when they're drinking, these have almost nothing to do with the alcoholic. These are about your behaviors, what you are going to do and what you're not going to do. That's all. And there's no negotiation here. You're not negotiating with the alcoholic in this regard. You're not trying to, do some kind of underhanded power play. You're not negotiating with them. You're not arguing with them. You're simply stating what your responses will be. That's all. You're not trying to bribe them or coerce them. You're not escalating into an argument. You're not trying to raise the stakes. You're not playing any games. This is just setting a limit and sticking to it. And when it comes to consequences, your fallback is to leave, and then your fallback is to get the police involved. Look, this is hard, especially coming from me, who has limited positive things to say about how the police deal with alcoholism. And it's difficult for me to give this as advice. But even if it's just a welfare check, you need to get the police involved. And really, you need to do it repeatedly. And the reason for this is perhaps not what you think. The reason for this is a little bit darker than simply trying to get them in trouble, right? Okay, so I hated this when it was done to me. I had the police called on me several times, and I hated it every time. And I used to think of it as an attack. Like my alcoholism was under attack, or I was being unfairly treated. But the truth is, let's say the worst happens and you are not able to save your loved one from this condition. Or let's say that you have no choice but to divorce, right? A pattern of repeated police welfare checks will establish your loved one as a repeated relapsing alcoholic in the eyes of the law. And it will offer you some protection should there be any legal ramifications, such as a divorce or such as a custody battle. Or such as, in the very worst case, if your alcoholic does not survive their condition, and there are issues related to the estate, or whether there is some responsibility to be applied to other people. This kind of behavior of notifying the relevant authorities that your loved one is an alcoholic will give you some self-protection later down the line. I hate saying that stuff, but it is useful to consider the worst case scenario and make decisions based on that. The police, it's likely that the police can't even do anything, right? If an alcoholic is drinking in their own home and is not really an immediate threat to anybody, the police can show up and do their welfare check, but they can't do anything. They're not going to have them committed because in the eyes of the law, they're not doing anything wrong. However, you are protecting yourself a little bit more every time you do it. If you do lose them, calling the police repeatedly will prevent the alcoholic from hurting you twice. First, by leaving them, and then second, by the law having to investigate whether or not you might be at fault. And while we're talking about dark stuff that's difficult to say related to alcoholism, let me also say very plainly that if there is violence involved, you need to go. You no longer have that choice. You have to go for your own sake, and you have to get the police involved. The statistics are spotty on this, but some of them report that as much as 60% of domestic violence cases involve alcohol, and that very heavy drinkers are more likely to commit an act of domestic violence. A person with a history of domestic violence is up to 8 times more likely to go on to commit murder. Now, while that is still incredibly rare within a relationship, it's almost zero, but not quite. It is also safe to say that the loved ones of someone with an acute alcohol use disorder are significantly more likely to be victims of violence, of violent crime. So if there's violence or even the threat of violence, leave before it escalates and call the police. And don't ever feel bad about doing it. Your hand has been forced. Okay, so ultimately, alcoholism is the responsibility of the alcoholic, and so is recovery. Okay, so they're not going to get better until they have made an active and genuine, sincere choice to get better. As much as we wish we could, we cannot love an alcoholic sober. And in fact, there is no amount of love in the world that can compete with an alcoholic's desire to drink. That desire to get better, it has to be internal. It can be prompted by external factors like regular police interventions or psych wards or health conditions. But the desire to get sober and stay sober has to be an internal one. Otherwise, it just won't work. Until the alcoholic demonstrates a real commitment to change, then you're chasing your tail, and soon you're going to be too dizzy to do anything practical. It's really common for loved ones of alcoholics to develop mental health issues of their own, most notably things like hypervigilance and anxiety disorders. Sleep disorders are all very common. Trauma disorders and consequences of trauma, nightmares and paranoia, even right up to delusion as a result of a partner's alcoholism. Not to mention things like social isolation and the breakdown of your healthy relationships too. All of this as a result of a loved one's alcoholism. Exposure to somebody else's alcoholism can be psychologically harmful, and choosing to stay is no way morally superior than choosing to leave. You don't owe anyone anything, and at some point, it is okay to protect yourself. Okay, so that's it for today. I don't feel like I've done justice to this subject at all. So I will be returning to it every now and then on the channel. Do subscribe if you would like to be kept abreast of updates in that regard. In the meantime, feel free to leave your opinions, even if they're contradictory to mine. Leave advice and leave your experiences in the comments, because they might hold value for somebody else who's stuck in this situation right now. If you've made it this far, do subscribe and head over to the Patreon for more personal content. And thank you for watching. And as always, good luck out there.